All right, you're on.
All right, so this presentation here is based on a display that I did back in 2015 at OA's Coin Club show. And it's basically my first foray into ancient Greek coins, Greek mythology. I was always interested in that. It's something that's reasonably popular. So it was my first collecting theme in the ancient Greek uh, side of things. You can see the variety of, let's see if I can get my pointer to work. No, that's the blank. There you go. The variety of Greek gods and goddesses here. That's most of what shows up on ancient Greek coins. That's mythology based. And the various gods or goddesses. There's all sorts of mythological creatures and other mythological uh, references to mythological stories as well. But most of the stuff I'm going to focus on here today is going to be the gods and goddesses themselves. So I broke it into two sections. The first is the Greek gods and goddesses, the pantheon at Mount Olympus, and then the second section is about the demigod Greek heroes. They show up on a lot of the coins. So first up, of course, is Zeus. He's the king of the Greek gods, ruler of Mount Olympus. He was the god of sky and thunder, and the brother and husband of Hera. There's a lot of incest going on in the god world. And there was also the brother of Poseidon.
Should we turn the lights off?
Hades doesn't really show up on any coins for some reason. I guess it'd be equivalent to like putting the devil on a coin today. So they didn't really do that. Zeus was definitely not a faithful husband. He had many lovers, and that keeps coming up as a recurring theme as you get throughout these mythological things. So the first coin here is Tetradrachm from the Macedonian kingdom. So it's struck under Philip II, who's the father to Alexander the Great. Sometime between 359 and 336 BC. It's made out of silver. It's about 26 millimeters in size, weighs around 14 grams. So you've got the warrior head of Zeus on the obverse, and then youth on horseback on the reverse. And there's a lot of examples of Zeus showing up on ancient Greek coinage. This is just the one that I thought was kind of the most, eye-catching. Hera is up next. She was the queen of the Greek gods, goddess of marriage and family. She was the wife and sister of Zeus. She didn't take too kindly to all of Zeus's extramarital affairs, so she frequently tried to get revenge on Zeus's lovers and their children. So that showed up in some of the stories later on too. This particular coin, it was cleaned rather harshly, so doesn't have much of the original toning on it, but you can see a veiled Hera on the obverse, and then Zeus actually on the reverse. This one was struck in Bruttium, so that's kind of mainland Italy, colonized by the Greeks, sometime between 213 and 205 BC. The silver drum, so that's kind of the base unit. You find drams or drachma, and then different multiples and fractions of that. So the tetradrachms, 4 drams, have like a hemidram, that'd be half a dram. This one's 20 millimeters, about 4.2 grams, made out of silver. Up next, we've got Poseidon, who's always kind of one of my favorites, god of seas, earthquakes, and tidal waves. The brother of Zeus and Hades. He married Nereid Amphitrite, although he had many lovers like most of the gods did. This particular coin was stuck in Boeotia. It's under federal coinage period, so 225 to 171 BC. The silver drum, so that base unit again, about 17 millimeters, almost 5 grams of silver. It's got the laureate head of Poseidon on the obverse here, and then Nike standing on the reverse. So, that's kind of the image of victory.
Dan, are these coins all in your collection, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're all right here. So this was kind of like a snapshot of my collection as of 2015, basically. Next up is Demeter, goddess of fertility, agriculture, nature, and the seasons, because she had a daughter named Persephone who was kidnapped by Hades, and there'll be more on that later. That was their explanation for winter and summer. Persephone was only allowed to visit her mother 6 months out of the year. But yeah, more on that story when I've got a coin of Persephone on it. So to be continued on the story. But you've got this coin here, got an image of Demeter facing right, barley here, and a plow on the reverse. This one was struck the Conias, was another region of Italy, 330 to 290 BC. It's a silver stater. So there's kind of two base denominations depending on what part of the Greek world you're in. It's either going to be based on a stater or based on a drum. One's 21 millimeters, about 7.8 grams.
Next up is Ares, the god of war, violence, and bloodshed. Ares was the son of Zeus and Hera. He was generally despised by all the gods, except for some reason Aphrodite liked him. This particular coin, it's a sizable 25, 26 millimeter bronze coin, so it's pretty hefty. It's got a nice image of an older Ares on the obverse there, and a hoplite soldier on the reverse. This one was struck by mercenaries in Brutium, so a lot of times Ares will show up on the coinage of mercenary groups because they're warriors. They like the god of war. It's good for their business. So this was struck sometime between 211 and 208 BC. It's a bronze diadram, so 2 of the base unit, and it's almost 16 grams. Next up, we've got Aphrodite. So talking about heavenly bodies earlier, I've only got the headshot here, but the goddess of love, beauty, desire, Aphrodite was the daughter of Zeus and an Oceanid named Dione. She was married to Hephaestus, who was the smithy of the gods, but she had many affairs, the most notable of which was with Ares. So this is a smaller coin. It's a hemilitra, and the litra was a denomination that only showed up on the island of Sicily. So this is half of that. So struck in Syracuse, Sicily between 344 and 336 BC. It's about 16.5 millimeters. It doesn't show up real great on here, but it looks a little better in hand, a little over 5 grams. You got the head of Aphrodite here, and then the forepart of a Pegasus actually on the other side. Next up, we've got Apollo. He shows up on a lot of coins from a lot of different areas. He is the god of light, knowledge, healing, plague, darkness, arts, music, poetry, prophecy, archers, the sun, manly youth, and beauty. So he is a busy guy. He was the son of Zeus and Leto, which I guess was one of the lesser-known other gods, and twin brother to Artemis. This particular coin, it's a bronze chalcyon. The bronze denominations, they get a little weird with the denomination names. Sometimes they don't even know what they are, and they just denominate them by the size of the coin. This one was 21 millimeters. You've got an image of Apollo on one side and then Athena on the reverse. This is from Thessaly, so we're kind of back to more like mainland Greece from the Thessalian League, which was 150 to 100 BC. So they're trying to stem the tide of Rome and ultimately not succeeding.
Just a quick question. How do you know that's Apollo and not Artemis?
Well, they look a little bit different. So Artemis is up next. So you can see in this, it's probably kind of hard to see with the lighting the way it is. Actually, if you turn off the lights, I don't know if that's going to make it better or not, but the hair is kind of pulled back a little bit more.
Our videographer will not let us touch the light.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, so I mean, Apollo does have somewhat feminine features, for a man, but usually Artemis is shown with a bow. So there's a quiver behind our shoulder there. So that's one of the ways you can tell. So Artemis was the goddess of hunt, virginity, childbirth, archery, the moon, and animals. There's some prominent temples to her that still survive to this day around the Greece and Sicily. Artemis was the daughter of Zeus and Leto and twin sister of Apollo. And so this particular coin, it's a bronze litra, so it was struck in Syracuse, Sicily, under the tyrant Agathocles between 317 and 289 BC. So it's 22.5 millimeters and about 8.9 grams. You've got Artemis on the obverse and then Thunderbolt on the reverse, which was often a symbol of Zeus. Next up is Athena, goddess of wisdom, handicrafts, defense, and strategic warfare. Athena was the daughter of Zeus and an Oceanid named Metis. She was said to have risen from her father's head, fully grown and in full battle armor. So it's one of the more creative and dramatic births of any of the god stories. So this particular coin is from Athens, which used, you've heard of the owls from Athens. They used owls, which was one of the symbols of Athena and wisdom. So you got Athena on the obverse and the owl on the reverse, and that's consistent for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the style of the design changes a bit. So this is one of the later styles, a new style silver tetradrachm from Athens. So this was struck sometime between like 118 and 117 BC. At that point, they're a Roman protectorate. It's about 27.5 millimeters, so it's a pretty sizable coin. Pretty nice design on that. About 16.5 grams. Of course, Athena on the obverse, and then the owl kind of standing over an amphora on the reverse there. And Athena shows up on a ton of coins too. This was just one of the larger, nicer designs. Hermes is up next, the messenger of the gods. Hermes was the god of commerce, thieves, and games. He was the son of Zeus and a nymph named Maia, and the second youngest of the Olympians. This particular coin is pretty small. It's only 10 millimeters. It's the little silver coin that was in there. It was struck in the region of Thrace in the city of Aenos sometime between 427 and 424 BC. So it's a silver diobol. So the obol is the smaller denomination. So if you think of like a dram is kind of sort of like a dollar, the obol's kind of sort of like a cent. So it's a diobol. So it's kind of sort of like a 2-cent piece if you want to think about it in more modern terms. It was only 1.2 grams. You've got Hermes wearing his signature helmet called Petassos, and then a goat on the other side. Next up is Dionysus. He was the god of wine celebrations and ecstasy. He was the son of Zeus and a mortal named Semele. So he was the youngest of the Olympians and the only one to have a mortal mother. So he was technically a demigod, not a god, but apparently he wasn't very heroic since he just sat around drinking all the time. This particular coin, it's a silver dram struck in Thrace. So 386 to 375 BC is when it was struck. So it's 14.5 millimeters, almost 3 grams. The obverse is actually the griffin over here, and then the reverse is a head of a young Dionysus. Up next is Persephone. So the queen of the underworld, is sort of not necessarily willingly, but she was the queen of the underworld, goddess of springtime. She was forcibly taken from her mother Demeter, so during the 6 months that she spends in the underworld, everything on earth wilts and dies because of Demeter's sorrow, and then during the 6 months she spends with her mother, the world becomes green and new again. So that's how they explain the change of the seasons. This particular coin, it's bronze, 23-ish millimeters, struck in Syracuse, Sicily, under the ruler Hecatos between 287 and 278 BC. So that's about 8.25 grams. So you've got the head of Persephone on the obverse, and then on the reverse you've got Nike driving a 2-horse chariot. All right, up next are the heroes. So, Zeus played around with the women, so you wind up with these demigods on Earth who can do more amazing things than your mere mortal. So there's all sorts of stories about these demigods doing heroic and sometimes less heroic things. So first up is Perseus. Perseus is most famous for his taking on of Medusa. He was the son of Zeus and a mortal named Dene. He was the first of the Greek divine heroes and defeated several monsters during his various exploits, but the taking on the Gorgonian Medusa was the most famous one. Basically, there was a king who fell in love with his mom and then basically he was trying to stop it, so the king sent him on an impossible task to go kill Medusa. So he ended up meeting up with some nymphs where he found some weapons. He found an adamantine sword and a polished shield, and he used the shield to view Medusa's reflection while she was sleeping and then snuck up and cut her head off. So there wasn't an amazing battle or anything in the actual story. He just kind of assassinated her in the night. But still, you can see this statue here that shows him, holding up her severed head, and more on what happened after that later. But this particular coin is kind of difficult, again, to see in the photo, but you've got Perseus on the obverse wearing his sort of winged helmet, which was kind of his signature look. Macedonian kingdom is where this coin was struck sometime between 179 and 168 BC. And on the obverse is an eagle standing, which again, eagles and thunderbolts are kind of the symbols of Zeus. So then Medusa herself, the Gorgonians is kind of the general term for, the snake-headed monsters, and they show up on a fair number of coins, actually. So you can see the snakes for hair on this particular coin, kind of ugly looking with the tongue sticking out and everything. Medusa was actually the only mortal Gorgon. So of course, their famous trademarks, they turn people into stone with their eyes. She was once a woman who was very vain and had very happy with her beautiful hair, but she laid with Poseidon in the temple of Athena, which pissed Athena off. So then Athena turned Medusa's hair into a cluster of hideous snakes, and she became a Gorgon. So that was the story of the origin of Medusa. So when you think about how she died and everything, you almost kind of feel sorry for her, actually. But this particular coin, it's a silver obol, so it's fairly small, only about 12 millimeters, a little over 1.6 grams there, struck in the region called Troas between 480 and 450 BC. So the obverse is actually the other side here of the eagle, and then the facing Gorgonian is on the reverse. And then the rest of that story is the birth of Pegasus. After Medusa's head was severed from her neck, sprang the winged divine stallion Pegasus. So after this unusual birth, Pegasus went up to Mount Olympus, and where he served Zeus, bringing lightning and thunder down from Olympus. And Perseus used the Pegasus as his mount for some of his adventures. So Pegasus shows up a fair amount in the Greek coins as well. This particular one is a silver stater from Corinth, struck between 340 and 320 BC. So it's around 22.7 millimeters. It's a decent sized coin, about 8.4 grams. You've got the Pegasus flying left on the obverse, and then the helmeted head of Athena on the reverse. And then last but not least here, we've got what most people know as Hercules. Hercules is actually the Roman kind of spelling and pronunciation. Heracles would be the Greek version. Son of Zeus and immortal. He was arguably the greatest of the divine heroes. He did all sorts of exploits. Hera, however, did not like him, so she drove him to madness, and in this state of madness, he killed his own children. And after he realized what he had done, he sought out redemption and was given 12 labors in order to cleanse himself of his sins. So you've got this whole list of labors here that show up in all sorts of Greek pottery and image on coins. But the image that you see of Hercules always shows him with the lion skin headdress, which was from his first labor to slay the Nemean lion, which he then used as basically his armor for the rest of his exploits, which ultimately ended up with him capturing the Cerberus, the three-headed dog, who's supposed to guard the gates of Hades. So the coin itself, Hercules shows up on a lot of coins, especially during the reign of Alexander and afterwards. This particular one is a silver tetradrachm struck in the Macedonian kingdom during the rule of Alexander the Great, so 336 to 323 BC. It's a pretty sizable coin with some pretty spectacular relief, actually, so if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, definitely check that one out. It's one of my favorite coins in my collection. About 28 millimeters and a little over 17 grams. You've got the head of Heracles facing right, wearing the lionskin headdress, and then on the reverse, you've got Zeus sitting on a throne. And unless there's any questions, that's what I've got.